Hey y'all, welcome to the Psychedelic Integration Podcast with Mystical Heart Collective. I'm Sinclair.
And I'm John.
And we help spiritual seekers and psychedelic explorers heal with psychedelics through holistic preparation, navigation, integration, retreats, talking about all the things. Like today, we're going to share our thoughts and feelings around WTF is spiritual alchemy. And this is a little more of an esoteric episode that's meant to challenge some of the limiting narratives that we see around psychedelics and what they actually do for us and what our part in that is, and to hopefully inspire some critical thinking and understanding of what psychedelic integration looks like in practice.
So before we get into what in the actual fuck is spiritual alchemy, we just want to talk a little bit about the history of alchemy and where this comes from. So the word alchemy comes from ancient Egypt. So ancient Egypt was not called Egypt to the people who lived there. It was called Kemet, or the Black Land, referring to the Nile and the fertile land that was there. And when the Arabs came in and started to occupy Egypt, they talked about this art and science that they had as the art and science of the Black Land. So thus the word alchemy. So alchemy is also kind of the root word. It's kind of the precursor to chemistry. So you can hear that chem again. So it was, well, on the outside, on the exoteric part of it, it was talking about transforming base metals such as lead into gold. On the esoteric or hidden or inner meaning of it, it was talking about transforming consciousness, our own base conscious, our own human consciousness, into a golden consciousness or the divine consciousness. And this, in the medieval times, was considered heresy. There was one Son of God, and his name was Jesus, and you could not become like him. You could worship him, but this being divine, being a child of God, was reserved for this one person, and this person became deified. And as we know, in medieval times, in Europe, anyone who was considered a heretic was swiftly executed, murdered, whatever, burned at the stake. There was all sorts of horrible stuff happening. But naturally, right, people's consciousness can't be suppressed. They cannot be controlled. So people were still interested in this transforming of their own consciousness and becoming divine themselves. So they were genius. And these people found these ways to hide this information and to encode it in symbolism. And this is really where our Western culture of secret societies and occult orders comes from, because just a few hundred years ago, it had to be done in secret. It had to be talked about behind closed doors, and you had to be initiated through test and trial to make sure that you were not really just trying to blow the whistle and get everyone executed. So that's where that comes from. But these alchemists used this symbolism of transforming base metals, and like I said before, representing our base or human consciousness, into gold, which represented our divine consciousness. So, and they were so smart too, because they chose this symbolism of generating wealth where there was none previously. All these kings and queens were funding these people to perform what they thought was material alchemy by turning lead into gold. And the promise would be that if they made this gold, that the king and queen would get some because they would get all of it because they funded this project. And really what they were doing was funding these explorers and these transformers of their own consciousness to do these experiments in the labs and on themselves to see how can they bring out the divine consciousness lying in wait within themselves.
It's pretty nerdy and pretty cool.
It is cool.
John really knows tons about this stuff, so I love hearing him talk about the esoteric alchemies of the past. In a more modern spiritual context, we hear this all the time, right? The alchemy of darkness into light. I'm doing shadow work and transforming it. I'm a light worker. I'm taking pain and turning it into joy. I'm finding something where there's nothing. All of this is great, really sort of inspirational language, right? And we've been taught in our spiritual communities that we can turn darkness into light by manipulating the problem, going deep into it, sitting in it, doing shadow work, like analyzing it, twisting it around, and then somehow we're going to take that and like magically disappear it and turn it into love and light. And, you know, now we're like high vibes only and all of that stuff. And the fact is, this isn't really how it's done. It's shadow work is real and important, and it means looking at and understanding your shadow and loving yourself in your darkness and seeing how you develop the personality and the habits and behaviors and thoughts and feelings that you have over time, and where does that come from, and what is the trauma in your past, and all of that is very, very important and powerful work. And we're still unpacking everything that was lost from these times from before, when this kind of growth and spiritual evolution had to be hidden because of organized religion and government oppression. And still today, a lot of people who are working with psychedelics to do this kind of alchemy work, spiritual alchemy, are in the closet. They're not able to share it. They might lose their job. They might get kicked out of their place of worship. They might lose their family. They might, you know, there's all kinds of reasons why people don't talk about doing this work. And so a lot of us are kind of disconnected from each other, and the ideas and thoughts and feelings that we have around what the shadow work actually looks like is kind of hidden. And so when we see on social media, like, wow, look at all these people transforming their lives, like, why can't I, you know, how do I do that? Maybe if I go drink plant medicine, it will, like, that's all it takes. I just go to the retreat and like it's fixed, right? And so what we want to do is kind of unpack what this actually looks like and explain some of the concepts around how you can actually create in your own life this shift, this transformation, this alchemy, and that maybe it's not what you think.
Yeah, so in Western society, like, our culture is pervaded with this idea that, like, through sheer force of will, bullheadedness, and determination, that we can solve any problem. And that the way to really, like, get a hold of something and fix it is to, like, just dig into it as hard as you can and focus on it and nothing else. And, like, it's like this idea of, like, okay, I want to build a dam. The person who would be celebrated in our society is the person who wades out into the water and starts just dropping stones and rocks and building materials right in the flowing water. And by their sheer force of will, they were able to, like, stop the current themselves by building up this wall over time, and, like, it completely destroyed them in the process. But, like, wow, how amazing that they were able to do this.
This is such a funny example because when John was talking about this when we were planning this podcast, I was like, people don't make dams like that. Like, I had no idea. I'm like, well, they just build the dam in the middle of the river because that's the kind of, like, culture that we have.
So what they actually do is they divert the river somewhere else so they have room to work on the dam in a dry riverbed. And we'll talk about in a little bit how that example ties into what exactly spiritual alchemy is.
There's another really great example of how, like, focused on the problems that we are in America. If we have a problem, we declare war on it. We have a war on drugs. We have a war on poverty. We have
COVID.
War on many other countries. We have war with, like, every other country. Yeah, now there's a war on COVID. There's
war on terror.
Oh,
right?
yeah, war on terror. How could I forget that one?
And it's like,
when we declare war on something, we're actively increasing that thing. Like, when we declared war on drugs, instead of decreasing the use of drugs, the pain and suffering from drugs, we created an entire huge industry for drugs that involves all of, like, the drug producing countries smuggling their drugs into the US. Now we have all these law enforcement agents that are in charge of, like, enforcing this war, which creates a huge economic, like, sector around the war on drugs. And we've created a huge prison population of incarcerated people who are being jailed for this. And it's like, instead of actually putting our attention to creating more good in people's lives so that they don't actually want to get addicted to drugs, or they're not prone to getting addicted to drugs, we have created a massive system of poverty, death, loss, and despair around our drug war.
So this example she's talking about is a perfect example, because it's like, okay, there's a drug problem, right? That someone recognized that there's like, okay, this is not good. We need to do something about this. But by focusing our attention on drugs and declaring a war on this whole problem that was perceived, it's actually fed energy into that problem. And now has created, like she said, these like a whole economy, a whole system around this. And it's expanded by making them illegal and fighting against them. It's created not only the original drug problem, but now there's a trafficking problem. Now there's poverty, and there's war in other countries. There's like
Human
increased,
trafficking.
yeah, exactly. There's increased violence. There's like prison systems are expanding. There's like all this is done as made the problem bigger. And I think what you were talking about was like, how different would it look if, okay, we have this problem on drugs, like what do we want to see in its place? We want to see health, community, we want to see like caretaking, we want to see like people who are well and can deal with their lives and the issues that come up in them without drugs. Like what if we put our attention on that? Like what all of our energy would be feeding those things, these healthy things.
And that's actually something that has happened in, I believe it's Portugal, is a country that has just completely decriminalized all drugs. They don't prosecute, they don't put money or attention into punishing people for having drug addiction. Instead, they give care, they do harm reduction, they create communities for people to live in, and their drug problem has been cut in half in like a very short amount of time. So the reason that we're describing all of this is because this is a really great way to illustrate what we're talking about as far as spiritual alchemy and what it looks like when we focus all of our attention more and more on the problem, the pain points, the thing, the darkness itself. What we're actually doing is creating more of that. And if you know anything about the law of attraction, the law of attraction is like simply like vibration attracts like. So if you want to attract something in your life that you want, you should put your attention, your focus, your intention, you should pay attention to that thing and it will come to you. And it actually also works in focusing on things that you don't want. So if you are wanting something really badly not to happen to you, and you're like all day, every day, like, oh my God, I hope this doesn't happen. I hope this doesn't happen. I hope this doesn't happen. You're also calling that into your life by
your thoughts,
giving it your attention.
Exactly. Your thoughts and your attention and your whole consciousness is wrapped up in this thing that you don't want to happen. Well, all it is you're thinking about that thing more and more and more and more, which is actually causing that thing to be attracted to you. Mm-hmm. So it's like, instead of that, what do you want? Like, if you don't want a disease, thinking about I don't want this disease, I don't want this disease, you're thinking about the disease the entire day. But if instead of I don't want the disease, I want to be healthy, on the other hand, and you're thinking I'm healthy, I want to be healthy, I want to be healthy, then your attention is focused on that. Your consciousness is wrapped up in this sphere of health, and it's pulling more health and attracting more health into your life.
A really beautiful message I got from one of my earlier San Pedro experiences was, we choose how we die by the way that we live. And I think a lot of us go through life thinking like, what's going to get me? Am I going to get cancer? Am I going to what is going to victimize me in my life? And we kind of talk about it like that, like, oh, well, this person got heart disease, or this person got this issue killed him. And then you think like, we actually do choose how we die by how we live. When we're choosing to take care of our health, to prioritize our well-being, to take action in our daily life, to take care of ourselves, to create joy in our lives, to have fun, to connect with other people who are happy and joyful, chances are we're not going to get sick. We're not going to call in those diseases. If we're, I used to be addicted to alcohol, and I spent my time in bars, smoking cigarettes, drinking a ton of alcohol, being really reckless with my physical body and my heart and my, connections with other people and I hung out with people who were behaving in the same way. My chances of becoming ill or dying from that kind of lifestyle were exponentially higher than they are with the lifestyle that I have now, which is like focused on taking care of myself and creating joy and helping other people find that in their lives. So what you're seeking is seeking you. And even if you know, when you stretch out the timeline long enough, these choices that we make every day, where we put our attention, where we're trying to turn our problems into health, the way that you get health is by doing healthy things. It's not by focusing on, oh my God, I'm on WebMD again and looking up like, is this cancer? Because yes, it is. Every time you look online, it's cancer. I know this because I've done it many times myself. And it's one of the things that I finally recognize, like, why do I do this to myself? Why do I put my attention? I'm like, oh, health thing. Oh, I'm scared. I should look outside myself to see if there's something wrong. There's nothing wrong with you. The internet is what's wrong with you. Stop looking at it. Every time I don't look up the thing on the internet, I never have cancer.
That's right. So I can hear already, like, what I think about when I'm hearing this is like, okay, so are we telling you to just completely ignore all your problems?
No.
No, of course not. We're not saying that. You may have heard this term before, like spiritual bypassing, pretending something that is very real is not real, and just being like, well, I feel really angry, but I'm so just happy and joyful all the time. I'm never angry. That's spiritual bypassing. That's not real.
Good vibes only, love and light only.
What is real is saying like, you know what, this thing is making me angry, and I can feel anger in this moment, and in this moment, I'm going to choose to, even though I'm feeling angry, to put my attention onto something that brings me joy.
Yeah, that's the difference between alchemy and spiritual bypassing. And so, okay, we've spent a lot of time talking about like how we really put tons of our energy and effort and attention on the problems in our lives. And it's okay. It's normal. It's really hard sometimes not to focus on your problems. And most of the reason that we do it is because we don't have an awareness that we're doing it.
Right.
It's a rut that we have. We develop these neural pathways in our brain. So it's like if you're looking for pain, you're going to find pain. If you're looking for depression, you're going to find depression. If you're looking for anxiety, you're going to find anxiety because your brain is looking for it. It's used to getting that. It's like a reward system. And the way that we have to break this is we have to rewire our brains. This is how breaking addiction works. This is how breaking any kind of habit where you're, have this negative reinforcement. You have to rewire your brain. And you can. And
that's not to say that, like, some of this analysis, some of going into the problem is not useful, right? So digging into it a little bit to understand it, to get some clarity on it, to understand where it comes from, to get, like, a clearer, more in-focus picture of what's going on is for sure necessary. After we get that and we keep digging into it over and over and over and over again, now we're just reinforcing the problem. So it's like once we get the clarity, we need to move on to something else. And that's what we want to talk about today. We want to talk about, like, how do I do that then? Okay, so I've gotten my clarity. I've kind of analyzed and figured out where this problem comes from, where this habit comes from, like the root cause of stuff. And like, I really want to transform this darkness into light. So how do I do that? So one of the key components of that for me is, like John just said, like acknowledging the problem. I've definitely had periods where I'm like, I don't know how to transform this right now. Right now I need to sit in it and feel it. And that's a really valid, important piece of this process. And once you've gotten past that, you can start to take action in your life to shift your focus from negative to positive. So one of the ways you can do this is to fill up your time with responsibilities, activities, hobbies, things that keep your hands and your mind busy. And I actually have a really good personal story about this. When I stopped drinking alcohol over 3 years ago, I did not have any support. I was alone. I had just moved away from Austin, where I'd lived for almost 20 years, and I didn't have a support system, and I didn't have
the willingness to go try to find one. And I didn't want to go to 12-step meetings. That didn't resonate with me. And so I was really kind of worried that it wasn't going to stick because I was just sort of by myself. And what I decided to do was, I love making hats. I love making costume, they're ridiculous. They're ridiculous. And it was like an art. It's like an art. It was an art project for me. So I got a ton of supplies, and I decided that I was going to watch every episode of Grey's Anatomy, which is kind of a terrible show. But for the first, my first 60, 90 days of sobriety, when I was not working, I was watching Grey's Anatomy and making hats. And like John was pointing out to me when I was telling him this story, he's like, if you just did one of those things, you probably would have slipped back into some of those thoughts. But because you had something to keep your hands busy and something to keep your mind busy at the same time, it really worked for me. I felt very comforting. It was like this storyline that I was following of these people having a lot of affairs in a hospital. It was very, trashy and funny. And it helped me forget about, oh my God, I'm going to feel so sorry for myself because I'm an addict and I don't know how to not be an addict. And I didn't know how I was going to keep being sober. I just knew that I didn't want to drink anymore. And creating a piece of art that felt really good to put my time and energy. I loved making them. They're so beautiful. And it felt like, look at this thing that I made. Like there was a tangible outcome. So filling up my time with that activity and hobby kept me busy and helped me pass time until something inside me shifted and I didn't necessarily have to do that piece of it anymore.
So what we're saying is, as you have a problem and you go into it and you're trying to figure it out and solve it, and you've gotten to a point where you've gotten as far as you can with that, it's time to divert the dam. It's time to divert the river and give yourself a different flow of this energy. So what she was talking about with making the hats is a perfect flow of energy, right? So she had this addiction, right? It's a very destructive and negative force in her life, and she removed herself from it and put herself into a hobby, into an action that was cultivating different energies. So this hat building is cultivating the energies of creativity. It's cultivating the energies of building and assimilating. It's taking all these smaller parts and putting them together and making something that is greater than the sum of all the parts. It's creating more beauty, and it's rewarding, right? And it's enjoyable to look at it and work with your hands, and it's cultivating all these energies within us. And when we've gone as far as we can with the figuring out, we put the problem on hold and we start to cultivate other energies in our lives. So anything can be used, right? If it's a positive force in our lives, anything can be used. And gardening is a perfect example, right? So, or taking care of an animal is a really great example. If we're taking care of an animal, and we're doing something destructive in our lives where you were talking about with addiction, right? There's this for my addiction, I had all these different aspects of it. There was the physical destruction, there was the economic destruction, there was the legal destruction, there was the mental and emotional destruction I was creating in my life. So I had all these different patterns that I was creating negativity in these different ways. And doing something like gardening, or I was using the example, taking care of an animal. So taking care of an animal, to take care of another animal, you have to be loving to this animal. You have to be compassionate. You have to try to understand the animal. You have to be completely present when you're with the animal. So now, even though taking care of this animal has nothing to do with the addiction, you're cultivating the energies of compassion, love, understanding, and presence. And as you build up the vibration of these things in your life, now when you come back to the other areas of your life that this addiction may live in, you're not coming at them with negativity and destruction as if you were engaging in this addiction or something. You're coming to your whole life with more understanding, with more compassion, with more presence. And this building up of these energies within ourselves and then bringing them into the rest of our life, this is really the spiritual alchemy. Sinclair was talking about this example of turning on the light in the dark room. So did you want to talk about that?
Oh yeah. So if you think about light and dark, how we think they work in the West is like, okay, I'm going to turn this darkness into light. But how it really works is the darkness is darkness. Darkness is, that's its nature. It's going to be dark. And the way that you just like, what's the word I'm looking for? Dissipate the darkness is just light a candle. You turn the light on. You create light, and that automatically makes it less dark. And that's how it works in life too. We think like, I have to solve this with my little human brain, and our brains can't solve it. The way that we solve it is creating joy, creating connection, creating fun, and so many, I cannot tell you how many stories of people who have gone from, you know, being depressed or suicidal or whatever thing, and they're like, you know, I just took this trip. I maxed out my credit cards and I went to Europe. And when I went to Europe, I met this person, and then all this stuff happened, and then it completely changed my life. And that like giving up on the problem and being like, you know what, I can't do this. I need to just like enjoy myself and have fun, and like whatever happens, happens. Having a trust that whatever happens, that's a really hard thing to cultivate. But I think psychedelics can teach us that trust of even the hard parts in your life, the most difficult things that we go through, those are happening for a reason, to help us. Like a lot of people in, you know, the psychedelic coaching, kind of addiction recovery coaching space, have a common belief that addiction is a gift. Addiction is a gift that enables you to become a superhero and turn darkness into light through your own addictive experience. And addiction is something that we talk about a lot because it's something that we've both overcome ourselves. But it's a fascinating, like, societal problem that is actually an example of how we get, we know what to do. We're trying to help
alchemy.
ourselves. Yeah. And the addictions form because we can't cope with the pain and suffering that we've had in our lives. Whatever trauma thing, we form addictions because we're trying to escape that pain. And the addictive cycle is creating this closed loop where you're safe inside of it because you're on the chase for drugs, and then you get the drugs, and then you take the drugs, and that is like a whole ritual, and that's exciting. And then you get high from the drugs, and then there's escapades that occur from the drugs, and then there's the coming down from the drugs, and then the problem starts over. So you never have time to think about what's actually underneath that problem. You don't have time to feel the pain, and the drugs make you high, so you're always feeling high, so you don't have space to feel it either.
So that is the principle around what you just talked about is totally the right principle, expressed in a wrong way.
Exactly.
So, we've figured out, we've dissected as much as we can, we've tried to understand the problem. Now it's time to leave it. And it's time to go do something else that will cultivate energies within ourselves that when it is naturally time to return to solving the problem, that we're better equipped to solve that problem. There's this, like, we would think that, like, well, in the West, we're taught that, like, let's say someone like Albert Einstein would just, like, the ideal way to solve whatever equation he was trying to solve was just to sit at the chalkboard 24 hours a day and never take a break and just like focus in on it. But what this guy actually did was like take frequent breaks and play the violin and do stuff that was completely unrelated to it. And an example of way like playing music really helps is okay, we have some problem in our lives, some whatever it is, whether it's a math equation or some psychological or emotional or mental issue, right? We put that on hold. And we go do something with music. And now we are inviting the vibration of beauty. Let's say we're learning a song. We are taking this process of learning and understanding, and we're cultivating that vibration. And then we're cultivating this vibration, this process of assimilating information and then expressing it uniquely as ourselves. And we're like connecting to our throat chakra and expression. And now that playing music has absolutely nothing to do with whatever issue is going on in our life. Let's say, like, is dealing with our anger. But now when we come back to that situation, we're coming back with all of this beauty. We're coming back with all of this habits of creation and expression in a nice way. And it makes it a little easier when we have that vibration flowing through us to choose something different when it comes to the situation that makes us angry.
A really simple way that you can start doing this in your own life is replacing complaining with gratitude and appreciation. So here's an example. Let's say you have, I don't know, back pain or something. And you wake up in the morning and the first thing that you think of is like, ugh, my back hurts. And you say that to yourself. And then you go and you make your coffee and then you feel it again. You're like, ugh, my back hurts. And then, how many times during the day are you saying, my back hurts, 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 my back hurts? What I was saying earlier is a lot of the ways that we do this in our lives, like getting dug into our problems, is that we create these habits around thinking about it and these like negative thought patterns. So in order to interrupt those, we have to be aware that they're there. And the reason I'm mentioning complaining is because one of the best, that's why doing like a meditation practice in the morning is really good, because it starts the day with space from that. And you may feel like while you're meditating, my back hurts. But you see that thought and then you're like, okay, I don't have to engage with that. And one of the greatest ways to curb your complaining is replacing it through gratitude. So when you have a pain, oh, my back hurts, you can be like, oh, I'm so glad I don't have COVID. Or I'm so grateful for my comfortable bed. Or, wow, this is my favorite one that I do every morning. Every morning I wake up and I say thank you to the giant ball of gas that is keeping us all alive. And I started doing it as kind of a joke, but now I like really feel this connection to the sun, because every day I'm like, the sun, like, wow, what an amazing, can you believe that we live on this rock and it's flying through space and this big ball of gas is just like heating it, and like all life exists because of this, because of the sun. Like the sun is something that we take for granted. And so instead of waking up and being like, doing a body scan of like, where does my body hurt? I'm like, look at this amazing sun that we have. And even that little shift, just starting your day, saying something nice, then you kind of notice you're starting to talk nicer to yourself.
Or like, okay, maybe like, man, I had some really debilitating back pain for almost like a year. And what I'm just realizing is like, while my back was hurting, none of my fingers or toes hurt. None of my ankles, my wrists, my knees, none of my legs, my whole torso, my head, all of that felt fine. So it's like I had 1,000,000 to 1 places where I actually felt absolutely great. And I had one area that hurt, and I gave all my attention to this one area. And the way I got out of the back pain was I filled up my time with other stuff. I started going to a job that I had to be present. I took on some extra work at a gym. So in my spare time now I was working. I was like, I'm going to go on a hike. I don't care if it hurts. I'm going to play music. I don't care if my back hurts during that. It's going to hurt anyway, so I might as well do some other stuff while it's hurting. And as I did that, I started to replace my consciousness, instead of focusing only on this back, was focused on what's going on at work, what's going on with music, what's going on in nature as I'm going on this hike. And before I knew it, there was like this one day I was like, oh my God, I didn't think about my back at all. I was thinking about the hike I was going to go on. I was thinking about the song I wanted to learn. I was thinking about what I needed to do at my second job at this gym. And it was like such a miracle that I replaced my focus, my consciousness, from something that was dark for me to, oh my God, now I'm focusing on all the light that there is.
The magic of all of this is that it doesn't have to be difficult. It can be small things like just bringing awareness to a thought pattern that makes you feel bad. It can be bringing an awareness to putting your energy into something besides the problem, even if you can only do that for a little bit at a time. It's like if you're so depressed that you can't do anything, and then on top of that, you're like, I'm so ashamed that I'm depressed. I'm so ashamed that I can't function in life how I want. So then we've not only gotten, lost in this darkness of depression, but we're also like flagellating ourselves about how shitty it is that we can't be better. And, instead of doing that, do something kind for yourself. Take a shower. Sometimes taking a shower is the only thing that you can do that day, and that's okay. There's no checklist that you have to meet of like, oh my God, I'm not allowed to have negative thoughts. I can't. That's not what this is about.
No.
What we are trying to do is empower you to see that you are actually a witch. Like,
That's right.
psychedelics showed me that I'm a witch. I have always been a witch. And I have magical powers, and I can, in fact, control what happens in my life. I'm not a victim. I don't have to choose to feel negatively about myself. I have a choice to talk nicely to myself. I have a choice to, even when I'm getting angry, I'm like, ow, I actually don't have to engage in that. I can just be like, you know what? This is not a big deal. Pfft, let it go. It's really powerful when you just start bringing awareness to what's going on. And this is really one of the reasons that we highly, highly, highly recommend sitting with psychedelics in a ceremony, because the reason that ceremony is so powerful is because it is a container. You said this so well earlier. I would love for you to say it again.
Yeah, so the psychedelics, at least my understanding of them, is that they open this portal within ourselves to the mystery, the all that is, this unbridled force, undirected force that has created everything, that really resides in each one of us. And as this portal opens in us, it can take us anywhere that our mind wants to go, anywhere that any whim of a thought that goes in any direction, and whatever. The ceremony sets an intention for that. It is when we're opening that portal to this unbridled force and power that's going to come through, we're focusing it, and I want to use this portal that I'm opening in this way for this thing. So we always talk about setting positive intentions, right? So it's like, I keep using this anger as an example, but a perfect example with anger is like, okay, rather than like, I need to get rid of this anger, there's this anger. Okay, well, what I want to do is I want to put compassion, understanding, love in its place. So the intention of this ceremony, the intention of using this medicine, the intention of opening this portal is to create more love, compassion, understanding within myself and within my life. And like Sinclair said, when we open the portal with that intention and that direction, that arrow for that force to go, then when it comes in, creating that love, compassion, understanding is like turning on the light in the darkness. And when you have love, understanding, and compassion, anger just naturally cannot exist there. We don't have to like grab hold of the anger and like try to manipulate it and turn it into looking like love. I mean, if you've been in a dark room, try to grab a piece of the darkness and do something with it. It's like, it's intangible. You cannot hold it. But if you go in there and flick a lighter, it's going to go away.
There's so many examples of this. Like, another way you could do it is go volunteer somewhere. Be of service to other people. Volunteering is a wonderful way to connect with other people, to get out of your own head, to help people who are less fortunate than you, to fill your time with positive activities. It's such a great place. And if you go volunteer at a spiritual center, they will make you work. You're going to be building things, gardening, cooking, cleaning, because that's, if you look at like anywhere from like an ayahuasca center where we worked, we had a ton of volunteers, and that's what they did. They took care of the grounds. They took care of the land. They took care of the people. At an ashram, same thing. They've got you scrubbing floors because that's part of your work, your meditation, your karma yoga. You're giving time of yourself, and it helps you get out of your own head. It helps you spend time doing something, and it helps you feel useful.
That's
and
right. You're cultivating within yourself the energies of cleanliness, of being of service, of being busy and feeling rewarded. There's this energy of giving back. There's all of these energies that you're through something silly like cleaning the toilet.
Cleanliness is next to godliness. There's a reason they say that, is because it takes you out of your thoughts into the present moment. And all of this is really about being present.
That's right.
It's about being present with who you are, where you are, being grateful for where you are, and creating love and nurturing and care. Self-care is not just a buzzword. Self-care is spiritual healing. Taking care of your home, taking care of your family, taking care of your body, taking care of creating food, making a nice, simple life that feels good is the highest spiritual act that you can do.
And doing these things with the intention of cultivating these energies within yourself for healing and more beauty is really the key, because we can do all of these things with kind of a wrong intention and create something that we don't want to create. And I'll give you a little example. Is like when I got clean, I was not happy with the way I looked, and I wanted to look more healthy. I wanted to look better. So I changed the way I ate, and I started going to the gym really quite religiously. And what happened was, on the outside, I was achieving all the things that I wanted to achieve. I was increasing muscle and decreasing body fat. And objectively, I was looking better and better and better. But what was going on was I was doing that because I was telling myself, you are not okay the way you are. And the more I changed my outside appearance, the worse I felt about my inside, because I kept cultivating this energy of, you're not good enough. You're not good enough. Every time I was eating something that was healthy, and every time I was going to the gym, I was reinforcing this intention of, you're not good enough the way you are. And so even though I fixed all this stuff on the outside, the inside I created a garbage can to live in. So now my intention around eating healthy and taking care of myself is turned into like, I love myself. And for me, not for everyone, but for me, loving myself looks like moving my body some, 3-4 days a week, and looks like eating things that make me feel good when I eat them. And when I've done that, I found this really great way. It's because my intention to do those things is not to like fix someone that's wrong. It's to take care of someone I love. So I'm cultivating this energy of taking care of myself because I love myself. So every time I'm moving, every time I'm eating nice foods, I'm feeding those energies in myself. So now the outside I'm happy with, and the inside I'm happy with.
It's really magical. Well, what did we learn today, kids? Be in the present moment. Put your energy into things that are not your problems. Focus on gratitude and appreciation instead of complaining. Live with intention. Get a garden. Volunteer. Fill your time up with hobbies. Watch Grey's Anatomy if you want. Take care of yourself.
That's right. And none of these things should feel like a checklist of things that you need to do now. They should feel like any one of those things that brings you joy, like go after it with your whole self, with your whole being, and watch your life transform. You are a magician, and this is the alchemist work. This is creating more of what you want in your life rather than focusing on the things that you don't like.
Thanks so much for joining us today on the Psychedelic Integration Podcast. We got a little weird and esoteric this episode, and it was really fun to talk about spiritual alchemy with you. And if you want to learn more about psychedelic integration and how to do it, we have an amazing course called Psychedelic Integration Academy. It's a 12-week online course that takes you through preparation, navigation, and integration. And you can do it and spend more time with us. It's really fun. We're really proud of it. It's really amazing. And it's open for registration right now. You can find it on our website at mysticalheartcollective.com. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook and where else?
And so excited to tell you guys, the end of June 2021, we are going to be having an ayahuasca and San Pedro retreat in Ecuador on the beach.
Oh my God.
So,
I can't believe it.
It's going to be so
it's
awesome.
Happening. It's actually June 28th to July 8th.
That's right. So when all the details are available, we will let you guys know through all the avenues Sinclair just said, our website, Facebook, Instagram. So keep your ear to the ground for all the details to come out soon.
And you can also click the link in this description to sign up for our mailing list. And that's really the best way to find out. We'll just tell you in your email.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions or comments, drop them in the comments section below on YouTube, or shoot us an email at hello@mysticalheartcollective.com. We'd love to talk to you about what the actual fuck is spiritual alchemy.
And if you like this podcast, please leave us a review. We're really trying to grow our audience. And thank you for all the shares and all the great comments that we've gotten from everyone who's been listening. We really appreciate it. And we do this work so that we can connect with other people who are also doing this work and hopefully turn the light switch on for enhanced psychedelic growth. So thanks so much and have a great week.
See you next time.